I never thought my creative crisis would lead me to wear tights and ballet slippers at 32. Standing in the mirrored studio of the Indianapolis Arts Center, I watched other women stretch with the grace I'd lost somewhere between failed screenplay pitches and empty coffee cups. "You must be Kennedy," said Mrs. Chen, the instructor whose silver hair was pulled into a perfect chignon. "First time?" I nodded, feeling ridiculous in my borrowed leotard. That's when I saw her. Blonde hair caught the studio light as she executed a flawless grand jeté across the floor. Her legs seemed to go on forever, and when she landed, it was silent as a whisper. "Trinity Lopez," Mrs. Chen announced. "Meet your partner for this session." Trinity turned, and damn, those blue eyes hit me like spring lightning. She was tall, maybe 5'8", with the kind of athletic build that spoke of outdoor work rather than gym memberships. When she smiled, I forgot why I'd been dreading this class. "Don't worry," she said, extending her hand. "I was terrible when I started." Her palm was slightly rough, calloused. Not what I expected from a ballet dancer. We stumbled through basic positions. My plie looked more like a squat, while Trinity moved with natural elegance. When she placed her hands on my waist to correct my posture, heat shot through my body in ways I hadn't felt in months. "Breathe," she whispered near my ear. "You're holding everything too tight." After class, she suggested coffee. We ended up at a corner cafe, where Trinity's passion exploded over lattes. She talked about bloodlines and breeding programs, her hands dancing as she described horses I'd never heard of. "You breed horses?" I interrupted. "Racehorses. Well, trying to." Her smile faltered slightly. "It's complicated." I watched her fingers trace patterns on the table, watched her eyes light up when discussing a mare named Starlight's genetic potential. This wasn't just work for her, this was everything. "What do you do?" she asked. "I write screenplays, or used to." The admission tasted bitter. "Currently, I'm what they call between projects." "Writer's block?" "More like writer's nightmare." Hollywood's not exactly welcoming to stories that don't fit their formulas. Trinity leaned forward. "What kind of stories do you want to tell?" Something in her voice made me answer honestly. "Real ones. Stories about people who don't give up on impossible dreams." Her smile returned, fuller this time. "Sounds like we have more in common than dance moves." When we finally left the cafe, Indianapolis's spring evening wrapped around us like possibility. Trinity walked me to my car, and for a moment, I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she touched my shoulder gently. "See you next week, partner." Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about her hands correcting my posture, her voice encouraging me to breathe. For the first time in months, I wanted to write something new. Something about a woman who moved like poetry and dreamed in horse bloodlines. Maybe this ballet class wasn't such a terrible idea after all. Tuesday evenings became my salvation. I'd spend all week anticipating Trinity's hands, guiding my arms into proper position, her patient corrections as I fumbled through combinations that seemed impossible for my writer's body to master. "Feel the music," she'd say, her breath warm against my neck as she moved behind me. "Don't think so much." Easy for her to say. Thinking was my profession, but around Trinity, my carefully controlled mind scattered like leaves in a windstorm. I found myself writing scenes where my heroines had Trinity's confident stride, her way of tilting her head when concentrating. After our third class, she surprised me. "Want to see where I work?" The drive to Trinity's farm took us past Indianapolis's suburbs into rolling countryside dotted with white fences. Her property stretched along a winding road, modest but pristine. The main barn was painted deep red, with brass nameplate gleaming in the afternoon sun. "This is Starlight," Trinity said, leading me to a stall where a chestnut mare stood watching us with intelligent eyes. "She's carrying what might be the next Kentucky Derby winner." Trinity's voice transformed when she talked about her horses. The careful politeness from dance class disappeared, replaced by raw passion that made my pulse quicken. She explained bloodlines like I discussed character development, with absolute certainty and fierce protectiveness. "Your grandfather started this?" I asked, reading a faded photo on her office wall. "My great-grandfather, 4 generations of Lopez horses." Her fingers traced the frame lovingly. "Some days I wonder if I'm fooling myself, thinking I can keep his legacy alive." The vulnerability in her admission caught me off guard. I stepped closer, close enough to smell her subtle perfume mixed with hay and leather. "You're not fooling yourself," I said softly. "Passion like yours doesn't lie." She turned then, those blue eyes searching mine. The moment stretched between us, heavy with possibility. Then Trinity leaned forward, her lips brushing mine in a kiss so gentle it felt like question and answer simultaneously. When we broke apart, my heart was hammering against my ribs. "I've wanted to do that since our first coffee," she whispered. "What took you so long?" Her laugh was breathless. "Wasn't sure you'd want me to." That night, lying in my apartment, I couldn't stop replaying the kiss. The way Trinity's hands had cupped my face, the soft sound she made when I kissed her back. My phone buzzed around 11. "Can't sleep either?" Trinity's text read. We talked until 3 in the morning. About her fears of losing the farm, about my struggles with rejection in Hollywood, about dreams that felt too big and too fragile to voice aloud. Trinity admitted she'd never felt comfortable with other people, that horses understood her better than humans ever had. "Until you," she added, her voice soft through the phone. "You listen like you actually hear what I'm saying." "Because what you're saying matters," I replied, meaning every word. The conversations became our routine. Late-night calls where Trinity would tell me about difficult foalings or problem owners, where I'd share my latest screenplay struggles. Her voice became the last sound I heard before sleep, the first thing I craved upon waking. During dance class, the chemistry between us was impossible to ignore. Mrs. Chen paired us for increasingly complex routines, and Trinity's touch burned through my leotard like brands. Other students started noticing our connection, the way we moved together like we'd been partners for years instead of weeks. "You two have something special," Mrs. Chen commented after a particularly fluid sequence. "Natural chemistry." Trinity and I exchanged glances, her cheeks flushing pink. Natural didn't begin to describe what was happening between us. It felt like destiny disguised as coincidence, like everything in my messy life had been leading to this moment, this woman, this impossible feeling of coming home. Something was wrong at Trinity's farm. I could see it in the tight lines around her eyes during Thursday's dance class, the way her usually graceful movements seemed distracted, mechanical. "Talk to me," I said after class, catching her arm as she headed for the exit. Trinity glanced around the emptying studio, then pulled me into a corner. "There's this racing commissioner, Marcus Webb. He's been pressuring independent breeders to sell to his consortium, making life difficult for those who refuse." "What kind of difficult?" "Surprise inspections, permit delays, licensing problems." Her jaw clenched. "Yesterday he showed up with 2 officials, claiming someone reported possible doping violations. Spent 4 hours tearing through my records." The anger in her voice made my chest tight. "Did they find anything?" "Of course not. But the harassment is working. 3 farms in our area have sold to Webb in the past 6 months. Trinity's hands trembled slightly. "I can't lose this place, Kennedy. It's everything my family built." That weekend, I drove out to help Trinity organize her paperwork. Her office was chaos, breeding records scattered across every surface, legal documents mixed with veterinary reports. As a screenwriter, I'd learned to navigate industry bureaucracy. This felt similar, just with higher stakes. "You need a system," I said, sorting papers into logical piles. "And probably a lawyer who specializes in racing regulations." Trinity watched me work with something like amazement. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." I looked up at her, meaning every word. "Your dreams matter to me now." She crossed the small office in 2 strides, cupping my face in her hands. This kiss was different from our first, deeper, more urgent. I could taste her relief, her gratitude, her growing trust. When we broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. "Thank you," she whispered against my lips. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Webb's off your back." Our dance rehearsals intensified as recital night approached. Mrs. Chen had choreographed a pas de deux that required absolute trust between partners. Trinity would lift me, spin me, catch me when I leaped. The routine demanded intimacy that translated perfectly from our growing relationship. "Feel my heartbeat," Trinity murmured during one particularly close sequence, her arms wrapped around my waist from behind. Match your breathing to mine. I could feel her pulse through her leotard, strong and steady. When she lifted me, I felt weightless, safe in her strength. The mirror reflected us moving as one person, two halves of something complete. Beautiful, Mrs. Chen called out. The audience will feel what you two have together. After rehearsal, Trinity suggested dinner at her place. Her farmhouse kitchen was warm and lived in, copper pots hanging from hooks, herbs growing in mason jars on the windowsill. I watched her cook pasta with the same focused attention she gave everything else. I called that lawyer you recommended, she said, stirring sauce. Jennifer Park? She thinks we can file complaints against Webb for harassment. Good. What else did she say? That having documentation of every interaction will be crucial, and that I need to be prepared for this to get uglier before it gets better. Trinity's shoulders sagged slightly. Some days I wonder if fighting is worth it. I moved behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist. Your great-grandfather didn't build this place so his family could give up when things got tough. Trinity leaned back against me, and I felt some of the tension leave her body. How did I get so lucky, finding you in that dance class? Maybe we found each other. She turned in my arms, those blue eyes serious. Kennedy, I need you to know something. This thing between us, it's not just attraction or loneliness. You make me brave in ways I've never been before. The honesty in her voice stole my breath. You make me want to write stories worth telling again. That night, Trinity didn't ask me to stay, but she didn't let me leave either. We sat on her porch swing until midnight, talking about everything and nothing, her head on my shoulder as crickets provided soundtrack to our confessions. When I finally drove home, my phone was already buzzing with a text from her, missing you already. I smiled, typing back. Good thing we have dance class Tuesday. Not soon enough. For the first time in months, my life felt like it was building towards something beautiful instead of falling apart. Webb could threaten Trinity's farm, Hollywood could reject my screenplays, but what we were creating together felt unshakable. At least, I thought it did. Recital night arrived with the nervous energy of opening night, backstage at the Indianapolis Arts Center. I adjusted my costume for the 100th time, watching other dancers stretch and run through their routines. My hands were shaking. Hey! Trinity appeared beside me, stunning in her deep blue leotard that matched her eyes perfectly. You ready for this? What if I mess up the lift sequence? Trinity took my trembling hands in hers. Look at me. We've done this routine 50 times. Your body knows what to do. Trust yourself the way I trust you. Something in her steady gaze calmed my racing heart. When our names were called, I followed Trinity onto the stage with newfound confidence. The lights dimmed, the music began, and suddenly nothing existed except the two of us moving together. Trinity's hands on my waist felt like coming home. When she lifted me, I soared. When she spun me, I became light itself. The audience faded away until it was just us, telling our story through movement, every gesture charged with the electricity we'd been building for weeks. The final pose found us inches apart, Trinity's arms wrapped around me, both of us breathing hard from exertion and adrenaline. For a moment, the theater was silent. Then applause erupted, washing over us like warm rain. We did it, Trinity whispered, her forehead pressed against mine. Backstage, Mrs. Chen beamed at us. That was extraordinary. The connection between you two, it's rare, very special. After the show, Trinity suggested celebrating at Meridian, a quiet restaurant downtown. Over wine and pasta, she kept reaching across the table to touch my hand, as if confirming I was real. I've never felt anything like that, she said. On stage, it was like we were sharing one heartbeat. Maybe we were. The wine was making me brave, or maybe it was the way Trinity was looking at me. Maybe we've been sharing one heartbeat since that first day in class. Trinity's thumb traced across my knuckles. Kennedy, would you come home with me tonight? The question hung between us, heavy with invitation and possibility. I knew what she was asking, and I knew my answer had been yes since our first kiss in the barn. Yes. The drive to her farm felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Trinity's hand found mine across the console, her fingers intertwining with mine, as Indianapolis gave way to countryside. Neither of us spoke, but the silence was charged with anticipation. Trinity's bedroom was simple and elegant, moonlight filtering through white curtains onto a queen bed covered in soft gray linens. She moved to light candles, her hands slightly unsteady. "Are you nervous?" I asked softly. "Terrified," she admitted with a breathless laugh. "It's been a long time since anyone mattered this much." I crossed to her, taking her hands in mine. "We don't have to do anything you're not ready for." Trinity's answer was to kiss me, deeper than ever before. Her hands tangled in my hair as we moved toward the bed, our careful choreography replaced by something more primal, more honest. When we finally came together, it was with the same trust we'd built on the dance floor, giving and taking in perfect rhythm. Afterward, Trinity traced lazy patterns on my shoulder while I listened to her heartbeat slow. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "What?" "I want to write your story. Not just about the horses, about all of it. Your family's legacy, the fight to save the farm, what you've built here." I propped myself up to look at her. "Would you trust me with that?" Trinity's smile was radiant in the candlelight. "I'd trust you with anything." We talked until dawn about the screenplay I wanted to write. Trinity shared stories I'd never heard, about her great-grandfather's first Kentucky Derby winner, about the mare of the year who'd started their bloodline, about the traditions and secrets that had kept Lopez stables alive through 4 generations. "There's something magical about what your family created," I said, watching sunrise paint Trinity's face golden. "People need to know these stories exist." "Will you stay?" Trinity asked, her fingers tracing my collarbone. "Not just this morning, stay and right here, where the stories happened." I thought about my empty apartment, my stalled career, my life that had felt like treading water until I walked into that dance class. Yes, Trinity's kiss tasted like new beginnings. Later that morning, over coffee in her kitchen, Trinity pulled out photo albums and documents I'd never seen. Family histories, breeding records going back decades, pictures of horses whose names were legend in racing circles. "This is your real story," she said, spreading papers across the table. 4 generations of dreamers who refused to quit. As I studied the photographs of Trinity's ancestors, standing proudly beside their champions, I realized I'd found more than a love story. I'd found my next screenplay, my reason for writing again, and maybe the most important story I'd ever tell. I'd been living at Trinity's farm for 2 weeks, my laptop permanently stationed at her kitchen table surrounded by breeding records and family photographs. The screenplay was flowing like never before, Trinity's story unfolding with the kind of authentic detail that Hollywood executives claimed they wanted, but rarely recognized. Trinity had gone to town for feed supplies, leaving me alone to work. I was searching her study for a specific photo of her great-grandfather when my fingers brushed against a wooden box tucked behind books on the highest shelf. It was heavier than expected, filled with letters tied in faded ribbon. The return address made my blood freeze, a Chen, Berkeley, California. My hands shook as I untied the ribbon. The letters were recent, some dated just weeks ago. Trinity had been corresponding with someone named Alex Chen regularly, someone who apparently knew intimate details about her life, her struggles with Webb, even her worries about the farm's future. "My dearest Alexandra," one letter began, using a name I'd never heard Trinity called. "Your last letter worried me. Are you sure this Kennedy woman understands what you're risking by fighting Webb? I know you value independence, but sometimes accepting help from someone who loves you makes more sense than stubborn pride. Alexandra?" Trinity's real name was Alexandra? I read further, my stomach dropping with each revelation. Alex Chen wasn't just a friend, she was Mrs. Chen's daughter, Trinity's former college roommate who had helped establish the breeding operation with family money years ago. The letters revealed a relationship that went far beyond casual friendship, filled with shared memories and intimate knowledge that made me feel like an intruder. "Remember our promise," another letter read. "No matter where life takes us, we'll always be there for each other's biggest decisions. I know you're falling for this screenwriter, but promise me you'll be careful. You have a tendency to give your whole heart before you know if someone deserves it." The sound of Trinity's truck in the driveway made me hastily retie the letters and shove the box back into place. When she entered the kitchen, her face glowing from the afternoon sun, I couldn't meet her eyes. "How's the writing going?" she asked, kissing my forehead as she passed. "You look pale. Everything okay?" "Fine," I lied, closing my laptop. "Just tired." That evening, Trinity seemed distracted during dinner, checking her phone repeatedly. When it rang, she glanced at the caller ID and smiled in a way that made my chest tight. "I should take this," she said, stepping onto the porch. Through the window, I watched her pace while talking, her free hand gesturing animatedly. The conversation lasted 20 minutes, and when she returned, there was something different in her demeanor. Lighter, more settled. "Work call?" I asked casually. "Something like that." Trinity sat beside me, but for the first time since we'd been together, the distance felt intentional. "Kennedy, I need to ask you something. How attached are you to staying here while you write?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I might need to travel next month. Business meetings on the West Coast. I was thinking maybe you'd want to come back to your apartment while I'm gone." West Coast, where Alex Chen lived. "How long would you be gone?" Trinity's hesitation lasted too long, a week, maybe 2 depending on how things go. That night, lying beside Trinity as she slept, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how many other secrets she was keeping. The woman I thought I knew suddenly felt like a stranger. Alexandra, instead of Trinity. A mysterious benefactor named Alex, who apparently had more influence over Trinity's decisions than I did. When Trinity's phone buzzed with a text at midnight, I watched her reach for it automatically, reading the message with a soft smile before deleting it. She thought I was asleep, but I saw everything. The careful way she hid the screen, the gentle expression that crossed her face, the way she held the phone against her chest for a moment, like she was holding something precious. "Who is Alex Chen to you?" I whispered into the darkness. But Trinity's breathing remained steady, lost in dreams I apparently wasn't part of. The next morning, Trinity was different again. Distracted, secretive, checking her phone constantly while pretending not to. When she left for the barn, I found myself staring at that hidden box of letters, knowing I should respect her privacy but unable to shake the feeling that everything between us was built on foundations I didn't understand. My screenplay had taken on new meaning. I was writing about secrets and legacies, about the stories people told themselves to justify keeping essential truths hidden. But now I wondered if I was writing Trinity's story, or if I was just another character in someone else's carefully constructed narrative. The woman I'd fallen in love with was named Trinity Lopez, horse breeder and dancer, who trusted me with her dreams and shared her bed with honest passion. But Alexandra, the woman whose real name was written in Alex Chen's letters, remained a mystery. And I was starting to suspect that Trinity preferred it that way. The truth began unraveling 3 days later when I decided to confront the mystery head-on. Trinity had gone to meet with her lawyer, leaving me alone with my growing suspicions and her hidden box of letters. This time I read everything. The correspondence painted a picture I wasn't prepared for. Alex Chen wasn't just Trinity's college friend. She was her former lover, her business partner, and apparently still her most trusted confidant. Letters dating back 5 years revealed their relationship had evolved from romance to something Trinity called essential friendship, but the intimacy in their exchanges made my stomach churn. "Alexandra," one recent letter read, "I've been thinking about your screenwriter situation. You know I only want your happiness, but are you sure you're not using this woman to avoid dealing with your real feelings? We both know you have patterns when it comes to running from intimacy." The worst part was discovering Trinity's professional name was actually her middle name. Her legal name was Alexandra Trinity Lopez, but she'd introduced herself to everyone as Trinity to distance herself from her shared past with Alex. The woman I'd fallen for was living under a careful construction designed to keep parts of her life separate. When Trinity returned that afternoon, I was waiting in her study with the box of letters open on her desk. "Kennedy." Her face went white. "Those are private." "Private from who? Your girlfriend?" The words came out harsher than I intended. Trinity closed the study door carefully. "Alex isn't my girlfriend. She hasn't been for years. But she was. And you never mentioned her, not once." I gestured at the scattered letters. "She knows everything about us, about Webb, about your business problems. She's been giving you advice about our relationship, and I had no idea she existed. Trinity sank into her desk chair, looking older than her 29 years. It's complicated. No, it's dishonest. You've been Alexandra your whole life. But you let me believe Trinity was your real name. You've been talking to your ex-lover about whether I'm worthy of you, but you never told me she existed. My voice was rising, but I couldn't stop. What else haven't you told me? Alex helped me buy this farm. Her family's money kept us afloat during the first 2 years when we weren't turning profit. Trinity's admission was quiet, defeated. She's not just my ex, she's my business partner, my oldest friend, Your what? My safety net. When everything goes to hell, Alex is the person I call. Trinity looked up at me with eyes full of guilt. She always has been. The confession hit me like a physical blow. So where does that leave me? Am I just some temporary distraction until you figure out whether you want to go back to your safety net? That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me about Alex before I moved in here. Fair would have been using your real name when you introduced yourself. Fair would have been letting me know that every major decision in your life gets filtered through your ex-girlfriend first. Trinity stood, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Kennedy, please. Alex and I are friends now, that's all. She's married, she has children, she lives 3,000 miles away. But you still need her approval for everything. Including me. I grabbed my laptop bag from the kitchen. How many times have you discussed our relationship with her? How many of your decisions about us were really hers? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Alexandra? Using her real name felt like a weapon. Explain to me how I'm supposed to trust someone who's been lying to me since the day we met. Trinity's composure finally cracked. I wasn't lying. I was protecting us. Alex has opinions about everything, and I didn't want her judgment to influence how I felt about you. So instead, you let her judgment influence how you acted with me. Same result, different method. I headed for the door. I need space to think about this. Kennedy, wait. Trinity followed me onto the porch. Don't leave like this. We can work through it. Can we? Because right now, I don't know who you are. The woman I fell for was independent, honest, someone who made her own decisions. But Alexandra apparently can't make a major choice without consulting Alex Chen first. Trinity's face crumpled. That's not true. Isn't it? When were you planning to tell me about your trip to California? Or were you hoping I'd never find out about that either? The silence was my answer. Trinity had been planning to see Alex without telling me, just like she'd been corresponding with her without telling me, just like she'd been living under a false name without telling me. I thought so. I got into my car, Trinity standing in the driveway looking lost and smaller than I'd ever seen her. Maybe spend some time figuring out who you want to be. Alexandra Lopez, who needs Alex Chen's permission to live her life, or Trinity, who was brave enough to dance with a stranger and fall in love without asking anyone's advice first. Driving back to my empty apartment, I felt like I was leaving two different people behind. Trinity, the confident horse breeder who'd captured my heart with her passion and honesty. And Alexandra, the scared woman who'd been hiding essential parts of herself behind careful constructions and strategic omissions. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was realizing Trinity had been comparing me to Alex this entire time, measuring our relationship against something I'd never even known existed. I'd been competing with a ghost, and losing. Back in my Indianapolis apartment, I tried to rebuild the life I'd abandoned for Trinity. The silence was deafening after weeks filled with her laughter, late-night conversations, and the comforting sounds of the farm. My screenplay sat unfinished, every page reminding me of the woman I'd thought I knew. Trinity called constantly. Text messages I deleted without reading. Voicemails I couldn't bring myself to play. After 4 days, I finally listened to one. Kennedy, please. I know I screwed up, but running away isn't going to solve this. We need to talk about Alex, about everything. I love you, damn it. That has to count for something. Love. She'd never said that word before, and hearing it now through my phone's tinny speaker felt like mockery. Tuesday evening arrived with its familiar pull toward dance class. I almost didn't go, but the thought of Trinity alone in that studio, waiting for a partner who wouldn't show, made me feel like the coward she'd accused me of being. Mrs. Chen's face lit up when I walked in. Kennedy, Trinity said you might not make it tonight. Trinity was stretching by the bar, her back to me. When she turned, I saw she'd been crying. Her usual confident posture was gone, replaced by something fragile that made my chest ache despite my anger. You came, she said softly. I made a commitment to the class. Mrs. Chen paired us automatically, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. The routine we'd perfected now felt stilted, careful. Trinity's hands on my waist were hesitant where they'd once been sure. This is ridiculous, she whispered during a turn sequence. We're better than this. Are we? Or were we just better at pretending? The class dragged on painfully. Other dancers kept glancing our way, sensing something was wrong with the partners who'd once moved like they shared one soul. When Mrs. Chen dismissed us early, I headed straight for my car. Trinity caught up with me in the parking lot. Kennedy, wait, I need to tell you something. What now? Another secret lover? Maybe a husband stashed somewhere? Alex is coming to Indianapolis. The words hit me like ice water. When? This weekend. For my birthday. Trinity looked miserable. I can't stop her. She's already booked the flight. Of course she is. Heaven forbid Alexandra make a decision without Alex's input. It's not like that. She comes every year for my birthday. It's tradition. Tradition built on what, exactly? The relationship you refuse to be honest about? Trinity stepped closer, and I caught her familiar scent mixed with something desperate. Kennedy, I swear to you, Alex and I are just friends now. Yes, we were together in college. Yes, she helped me buy the farm. But that was years ago. She's married, she has kids, she lives her own life. Then why do you need her approval for everything? Trinity was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer, because she's the only person who never left. When my parents died, Alex stayed. When I almost lost the farm the first time, Alex helped. When I doubted every decision I made, Alex listened without judgment. And now? Now she thinks I'm making another mistake with you. Trinity's honesty cut deep. She thinks I'm using you to avoid dealing with my fear of real intimacy. The parking lot suddenly felt too small, too exposed. What do you think? I think I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I think Alex is wrong about this, but I don't know how to prove it without pushing away the one person who's never given up on me. So you chose her. Again. I didn't choose anyone. I just didn't know how to handle having you both in my life. The admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. Trinity's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it automatically. Even now, even in the middle of our fight, Alex's communications took precedence. Is that her? Trinity's guilty expression was answer enough. She's confirming her flight details. Of course she is. I opened my car door. Enjoy your birthday weekend, Alexandra. Maybe Alex can help you figure out who you want to be when you grow up. Kennedy, please don't do this. Do what? Give you space to have your nice comfortable tradition without the complication of your current girlfriend? You're not a complication. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years. Then act like it. Stop treating me like some side plot in the Alex and Alexandra show. I drove away, leaving Trinity standing alone under the parking lot lights, looking as lost as I felt. At home, I poured wine and tried to focus on my screenplay, but every line I'd written about Trinity's courage now felt like fiction. The real Trinity was apparently someone who needed permission to love, who couldn't make decisions without consulting her safety net 3,000 miles away. My phone rang at midnight. Trinity's name on the screen made my heart race despite everything. Don't hang up, she said before I could speak. Alex just called. She wanted to discuss you, to strategize about how to handle the weekend, and I told her no. I sat up straighter. What? I told her my relationship with you isn't up for discussion. That if she wants to be part of my life, she needs to respect that you're part of it too. Trinity's voice was shaky but determined. I chose you, Kennedy. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud, but I choose you. The words I'd been desperate to hear sounded different than I'd imagined. Sadder, more complicated, weighted with the reality that choosing me meant Trinity was finally willing to disappoint Alex. What did she say? She's still coming for my birthday. But now she's coming to meet you properly, not to save me from you. It wasn't the victory I'd wanted, but it was something. Maybe it was even the beginning of something honest. Alex Chen arrived on Friday afternoon like a perfectly controlled storm. I watched from Trinity's kitchen window as a silver rental car pulled into the driveway, and out stepped someone who looked exactly like what I'd imagined. Polished, confident, with the kind of understated elegance that came from old money and good breeding. She was beautiful in a way that made my insecurities flare. Tall like Trinity, but with the refined posture of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. Her black hair was cut in a sleek bob, and when she hugged Trinity on the porch, I saw the easy intimacy between them that years of friendship had built. "Kennedy, come meet Alex," Trinity called, but her voice carried an edge of nervousness I'd never heard before. Alex's handshake was firm, her smile polite but assessing. The famous screenwriter. "Trinity's told me so much about you." "Has she?" "That's interesting, since she never mentioned you at all." Alex's eyebrow arched slightly, but her composure never cracked. "Yes. I imagine that was confusing for you." She turned to Trinity. "Should we discuss gifts, or did you want to maintain the surprise element?" The casual dismissal stung, but what hurt more was watching Trinity slip back into old patterns. Around Alex, she became more deferential, seeking approval in tiny ways I'd never noticed with anyone else. When Alex complimented the farm improvements, Trinity beamed. When Alex suggested dinner reservations, Trinity immediately agreed. "Actually," I interjected, "I made reservations at Meridian for Trinity's birthday, the place where we celebrated, after our dance recital." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Alex looked between Trinity and me, clearly recognizing the territorial challenge in my words. "Of course," Alex said smoothly. "How thoughtful of you to recreate your special moment." That evening at dinner, I watched Trinity navigate between us like a diplomat in hostile territory. Alex was charming, intelligent, and completely secure in her position as Trinity's longest relationship. She told stories about their college years, their early business struggles, shared jokes I wasn't part of. "Remember when you thought you could train midnight yourself?" Alex laughed, touching Trinity's arm. 2 weeks of bruises before you admitted you needed professional help." Trinity's smile was fond, nostalgic. "You were right about that, too." "I'm usually right about your horses. And your people." Alex's glance at me was pointed but not unkind. After dinner, Alex insisted on paying, waving off Trinity's protests with practiced ease. Walking back to our cars, I felt like the third wheel I'd apparently always been. Back at the farm, Alex settled into the guest room like she belonged there, which I was beginning to realize she did. This was her tradition, her space, her relationship with Trinity that predated me and would probably outlast me. Later that night, lying in Trinity's bed while she showered, I heard voices drift up from the kitchen. Alex and Trinity, talking in the low, intimate tones of people who'd shared everything. I couldn't make out words, but I didn't need to. The rhythm of their conversation was too familiar, too comfortable. When Trinity finally came to bed, she was distant, distracted. "Good visit with Alex?" I asked. "She's worried about you, about us." "What did you tell her?" Trinity was quiet for a long time. "That I'm happy. That you make me happy in ways I didn't know I was missing." "And what did she say?" "That happiness and sustainability aren't the same thing." The words hit like a slap. "She thinks I'm not sustainable for you. She thinks you're running from something, and when you figure out what that is, you'll leave." Trinity rolled toward me, her hand finding mine in the darkness. I told her she was wrong. "But you're not sure, are you?" Trinity's hesitation was answer enough. Even now, even after everything we'd built together, she was still measuring me against Alex's standards, still wondering if her oldest friend might be right about my staying power. Saturday morning brought Trinity's birthday, and my growing realization that I was fighting a losing battle. Alex had brought gifts that showed intimate knowledge of Trinity's tastes. A vintage racing photo, a leather-bound book about bloodlines, a bottle of wine from the year Trinity's great-grandfather won his first Kentucky Derby. My gift suddenly felt inadequate. I'd written Trinity a scene from our screenplay, the moment her character decides to fight for the farm despite overwhelming odds. Personal, heartfelt, but somehow smaller next to Alex's thoughtful extravagance. "This is beautiful," Trinity said, reading my pages with genuine emotion. "Thank you." Alex watched the exchange with interest. You're writing Trinity's story? Our story, I corrected. About the farm, the family legacy, what it means to fight for something that matters. How interesting. Trinity, you never mentioned the screenplay would be personal. Trinity's guilty look told me everything. She'd been discussing my project with Alex, probably asking for advice about whether to trust me with family secrets. Another betrayal, another reminder that nothing between us happened without Alex's involvement. That afternoon, while Trinity gave Alex a tour of the breeding facilities, I packed my things. I couldn't compete with a friendship that had weathered years, distance, marriage, and change. I couldn't be with someone who would always need Alex's approval to fully commit to me. Trinity found me loading my car as the sun was setting. You're leaving. On my birthday. I'm giving you what you really want. Time with Alex without the complication of your current girlfriend. That's not what I want. Trinity's voice was desperate. Kennedy, please don't do this. Do what? Face reality? I slammed my trunk shut. You'll never choose me over her, Trinity. Not really, and I'm tired of pretending that's enough. Alex appeared on the porch, watching our confrontation with the careful attention of someone who'd seen this scene before with other women. She's right, you know, Alex called out, walking toward us. Trinity has patterns. She falls hard, fast, and completely. But when things get difficult, she runs, usually to me. Trinity's voice carried warning. No, let her finish, I said bitterly. I want to hear this. Alex looked between us with something like pity. Trinity's never learned to fight for relationships because she's never had to. I've always been here as backup, as the safe choice she can return to when real intimacy gets too scary. The honesty in Alex's assessment was brutal and accurate. Trinity didn't defend herself, didn't argue. She just stood there looking, smaller, and more lost than I'd ever seen her. So, what are you saying? I asked Alex. I'm saying maybe it's time I stopped being Trinity's safety net. Maybe it's time she learned to choose something without having me as backup. Trinity looked stricken. Alex, you don't mean that. I do, actually. Kennedy's right to be angry. You've been treating her like a placeholder while you figured out if our friendship could survive your new relationship. Alex's smile was sad but determined. I think it's time you chose, Trinity, really chose, without consulting me first. The silence stretched between the three of us like a chasm. Trinity looked back and forth between Alex and me, and I realized this was the moment everything had been building toward. Not just my relationship with Trinity, but her relationship with dependence, with fear, with the comfortable patterns that had kept her safe but alone. I choose Kennedy, Trinity said quietly. I choose us. Even if it means disappointing you, Alex. Even if it means making mistakes without your guidance. Alex nodded, looking proud and heartbroken simultaneously. Good. It's about time. I wanted to feel victorious, but all I felt was exhausted. It shouldn't have taken an ultimatum. No, Trinity agreed. It shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Kennedy, for all of it. As Alex packed to leave early, cutting her visit short to give Trinity and me space to rebuild, I wondered if we could. If love was enough to overcome the fundamental trust issues that had poisoned us from the beginning. Standing in Trinity's driveway, watching her oldest friend drive away, I realized we were about to find out. The weeks after Alex's departure were the hardest of my life. Trinity and I moved around each other carefully, like survivors of an explosion still checking for injuries. She'd chosen me, but the choice had cost her the safety net she'd relied on for years. I could see the fear in her eyes sometimes, the panic of someone learning to walk without crutches. I called Alex yesterday, Trinity admitted one evening, as we worked on my screenplay together, just to hear her voice. Then I hung up before she answered. I looked up from my laptop. Why? Because I realized I was looking for permission to miss her, and I don't need anyone's permission anymore. It was progress, slow and painful, but real. Trinity began making decisions without phantom consultations, stopped reaching for her phone to text updates to California. When Webb's lawyers sent new harassment letters, she handled them with her own attorney instead of calling Alex for advice. The trust between us rebuilt gradually, like muscle memory returning after injury. Trinity started using her real name with new clients, introducing herself as Alexandra Lopez instead of hiding behind her middle name. small steps toward the honesty we'd both craved. My screenplay evolved too, becoming less about Trinity's individual story and more about what happens when two people choose to build something together despite their damage. The racing scenes were still there, the family legacy, the fight against corruption, but at its heart, it became a love story about courage and second chances. 3 months after Alex left, Trinity surprised me with tickets to a film festival in Los Angeles where independent screenwriters showcased their work. "I think your story is ready for the world," she said. "And I think you're ready too." The festival was a whirlwind of industry professionals, networking events, and screenings in cramped theaters. My screenplay about Lopez Stables made it to the final round, competing against projects with bigger budgets and famous attachments. Trinity sat beside me in the audience as my work was performed by professional actors. Hearing our story told aloud, watching strangers respond to the emotional beats we'd lived through, felt surreal. When the judges announced winners, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. 3rd place, Lopez Legacy, by Kennedy Russell. Trinity grabbed my hand as applause filled the theater. Not 1st place, but recognition. Validation that our story mattered to people beyond ourselves. At the after-party, producers approached with interest. Not major studio deals, but independent financing possibilities. Cable television options, the kind of opportunities that could launch a career in meaningful ways. "You did it," Trinity whispered, as we danced slowly on the hotel terrace overlooking the city lights. "You found your story." "We found it," I corrected. "This never would have existed without you trusting me with your truth." 6 months later, back in Indianapolis, Trinity stood in our renovated farmhouse kitchen, reading industry magazines that featured articles about Lopez Legacy's development deal with a streaming network. The adaptation wouldn't be a blockbuster, but it would be honest, authentic, the kind of story that changed how people thought about family legacies and fighting for dreams. "Any regrets?" I asked, wrapping my arms around her from behind. "About the screenplay? Never." Trinity leaned back against me. "About us? Only that it took me so long to understand that love isn't about having backup plans." The morning sun streamed through windows Trinity had painted herself, illuminating photos of us at dance recitals, horse shows, industry events where we'd learned to navigate success together. No pictures of Alex, but no bitterness either. Trinity had learned to be grateful for what Alex had given her without needing Alex's approval to move forward. My phone buzzed with a text from my agent about a new project. Another screenplay opportunity. Real career momentum building from the foundation we'd created together. "What's next?" Trinity asked, reading the message over my shoulder. "That's up to us. Together. No safety nets, no backup plans." Trinity turned in my arms, her smile radiant in the morning light. "Sounds terrifying." The best things usually do. When Trinity kissed me then, it tasted like possibility. Like everything we'd fought for and everything we still had to discover. Outside, horses moved across pastures that would stay in Lopez's hands for another generation. Inside, 2 women who'd learned to choose each other over fear planned the next chapter of a story that finally belonged completely to them. The screenplay had been our beginning, but this was our real ending. Not perfect, not without scars from the battles we'd fought to get here, but honest, earned, and entirely our own. Sometimes the most important victories aren't about defeating external enemies. Sometimes they're about learning to trust yourself enough to choose love without keeping one foot in the exit. Trinity had stopped running to Alex when things got difficult. I'd stopped waiting for her to disappoint me. What we'd built together wasn't just a relationship. It was proof that 2 damaged people could create something stronger than the sum of their individual fears. And that was worth every difficult conversation, every moment of uncertainty, every risk we'd taken to get here.